Welcome back, thanks for tuning into our Reddit cheating stories. Which country are you watching from? State in comment and please subscribe to our channel. Let's dive in. The Jordanian sun beat down on Sergeant Major Jake Stratton, baking the sand to an almost unbearable heat. 10 years in the Special Forces had taught him to ignore discomfort, to focus on the mission. Today's mission was simple: escort a high-value asset, a nervous, sweaty tech mogul, across a stretch of desert notorious for insurgent activity. Jake trusted his team: Ramirez, a young but sharp sniper; Chen, a quiet, efficient demolitions expert; and Davis, his oldest friend and a master of close-quarters combat. They were the best, handpicked for their skills and their unwavering loyalty. Or so he thought. The ambush hit them hard and fast. A volley of RPG screamed across the sand, followed by a hail of AK-47 fire. Jake reacted instinctively, shoving the mogul down and returning fire, his M4 bucking in his hands. Contact front. Heavy weapons, he yelled into his comms. He saw Ramirez take out 2 insurgents with precise headshots before disappearing behind cover. Chen was laying down suppressing fire, allowing Davis to maneuver. But something wasn't right. The insurgents were too well prepared, their attack too coordinated. They knew exactly where they were, exactly what their defenses were. It was like they had inside information. Then it happened. A figure emerged from behind a dune, not an insurgent, but Davis. He wasn't firing at the enemy. He was aiming at Jake. Davis. What the hell? Jake shouted, confused and disbelieving. Davis's face was grim, his eyes filled with a strange mix of regret and determination. Sorry, Jake. It's nothing personal. Before Jake could react, Davis fired. The bullet ripped through Jake's body armor, sending him sprawling. The world swam, and the roar of gunfire faded into a muffled echo. He saw Davis reload, his face a mask of cold resolve. Then darkness. He woke to the taste of sand and blood. The sun was setting, casting long, eerie shadows across the battlefield. His body screamed in protest, every breath a searing agony. He was alone. He managed to crawl to the overturned Humvee, his hand finding his own knife. He pulled himself up, using the wreckage for support. The scene was a massacre. Ramirez and Chen lay dead, their bodies riddled with bullets. The tech mogul was gone. Davis was gone too. Rage, cold and pure, surged through him, eclipsing the pain. He wouldn't die here. He would find Davis. He would find out why. Using his training, he assessed his injuries. The bullet had pierced his lung, but the armor had saved him from a direct hit to the heart. He needed to stop the bleeding, find water, and get out of the desert. He bandaged his wound with a piece of his uniform, ignoring the white-hot pain. He found a half-empty canteen in the Humvee and drank sparingly, conserving every drop. He knew he was on borrowed time. As he stumbled away from the wreckage, he found a discarded cell phone. Miraculously, it had a signal. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years, a number only a handful of people knew. "Snake," he said, his voice a raspy whisper. "I need your help. I've been betrayed." Snake was his old handler, a shadowy figure in the intelligence community. A man of few words, but immense resources. He was the only person Jake could trust. Within hours, a medevac helicopter arrived, whisking Jake away to a hidden military hospital. Days turned into weeks as he recovered, his body slowly healing, but his mind consumed by questions. Snake visited him often, his face unreadable. He provided Jake with information, cryptic pieces of a puzzle that was slowly starting to take shape. "Davis has a large sum of money deposited in an offshore account," Snake said one day, his voice low. "He's also been in contact with a known mercenary group." Jake stared at him, his jaw tight. "Who hired him?" Snake hesitated, his eyes filled with a strange discomfort. "It's complicated, Jake." "Tell me," Jake demanded, his voice dangerously low. Snake sighed. "The money originated from a source that's difficult to trace. But, the initial transfer was made from an account linked to your wife, Sarah." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Sarah. His wife of 15 years. The woman he loved, the woman he trusted with his life. No, he said, shaking his head. That's impossible. There must be some mistake. I wish there was, Jake, Snake said, his voice grave. But the evidence is irrefutable. Your wife, Sarah, paid someone to kill you. The world tilted on its axis. Everything he thought he knew, everything he believed in, shattered into a million pieces. He remembered Sarah's increasingly distant behavior in recent months, the hushed phone calls, the unexplained absences. He had dismissed them as stress, the pressures of her demanding job. He had been so blind. He spent the next few days in a daze, replaying his life with Sarah, searching for clues he had missed. He remembered her complaints about his dangerous job, her fears that he would never come home. Had she finally decided she'd had enough? He knew he couldn't stay in the hospital any longer. He needed answers. He needed to confront Sarah. And he needed to find Davis. I'm leaving, he told Snake. Snake nodded, unsurprised. I expected as much. I can't officially sanction what you're planning, Jake. But I can offer you some assistance. He handed Jake a file containing everything they knew about Davis's current location and the mercenary group he was working with. He also provided him with a new identity, a passport, and a plane ticket to the United States. Be careful, Jake, Snake said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. Don't let revenge consume you. Jake didn't reply. He was already gone, lost in his own dark thoughts. He arrived in Chicago under the name John Smith, a ghost in his own city. He rented a small, nondescript apartment and began to plan his next move. He knew he couldn't just burst into Sarah's life and demand answers. He needed to be careful, to gather evidence, to understand her motivations. He started by watching her. He followed her to work, to the grocery store, to her yoga classes. He saw the same beautiful woman he had married, but now he saw a darkness in her eyes, a secret she was desperately trying to hide. One evening, he followed her to a secluded bar on the outskirts of the city. She met a man there, a well-dressed, arrogant-looking businessman. They talked for hours, their voices low and intimate. Jake used his skills to eavesdrop on their conversation. He learned that the man was a real estate developer, and that Sarah had been working with him on a lucrative land deal. He also learned that they were having an affair. He realized that Sarah's betrayal wasn't just about his dangerous job. It was about money, about power, about a new life with someone else. The realization fueled his rage. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. He had to confront her. He waited until she returned home, then he slipped into her house unnoticed, his movements silent and deadly. He found her in the living room, sipping wine and watching television. She gasped when she saw him, her face turning pale. Jake! What? How did you get in here? We need to talk, Sarah, he said, his voice cold and emotionless. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, avoiding his gaze. He showed her the evidence he had gathered, the bank statements, the phone records, the photographs of her with the real estate developer. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. It's true, she confessed. I did it. I hired someone to kill you. Why, Sarah? Why would you do this to me? He asked, his voice filled with pain. I was tired of living in fear, she said, her voice choked with tears. I was tired of worrying every time you went away. And I met Mark. He offered me a new life, a life of luxury and security. I know it was wrong, Jake, but I couldn't help myself. So you decided to have me killed, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. That's your idea of a solution. I didn't want you to die, she sobbed. I just wanted you to disappear. I wanted you to leave me alone. Jake stared at her, his heart filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. He couldn't believe that the woman he had loved could be so cold, so calculating. He knew he couldn't kill her. He wasn't a murderer. But he couldn't forgive her either. I'm leaving, Sarah, he said, turning to walk away. I never want to see you again. Jake, please don't go, she pleaded. I'm sorry. I'll do anything to make it up to you. He stopped at the door and turned back to face her. There's nothing you can do to make it up to me, Sarah, he said, his voice filled with contempt. You've destroyed everything we had. You've destroyed me. He walked out of the house, leaving Sarah alone in her misery. He knew he would never be the same. Now that he had confronted Sarah, he could focus on his primary objective, finding Davis. Snake's file had provided him with a lead. Davis was working as a security consultant for a mining company in Colombia, a company with ties to a powerful drug cartel. He flew to Colombia, again under the alias John Smith. He spent weeks tracking Davis, learning his routines, studying his weaknesses. He discovered that Davis was living a life of luxury, surrounded by bodyguards and enjoying the perks of his association with the cartel. Jake knew he couldn't just walk in and kill Davis. He needed to be smart, to be careful, to use his skills to his advantage. He started by infiltrating the mining company, using his special forces training to blend in with the local workers. He befriended some of the miners, learning about the company's operations and the cartel's influence. He discovered that Davis was responsible for securing the company's gold shipments, ensuring that they reached the cartel safely. He also learned that Davis was laundering money for the cartel through a network of offshore accounts. Jake decided to use this information to his advantage. He contacted a rival drug cartel, offering to provide them with information about Davis's operations in exchange for their help in eliminating him. The rival cartel agreed, seeing an opportunity to weaken their enemy and gain control of the mining company's gold shipments. They provided Jake with a team of assassins and the resources he needed to carry out his plan. Together, they planned an ambush, targeting Davis's convoy as it transported a shipment of gold through the jungle. The ambush was swift and brutal. Jake and his team of assassins attacked the convoy with a barrage of gunfire and explosives, overwhelming Davis's security detail. Davis fought back fiercely, using his special forces training to defend himself. But he was outnumbered and outgunned. Jake finally cornered Davis in the back of an armored truck. They faced each other, their eyes locked in a deadly stare. "Why, Davis?" Jake asked, his voice filled with anger and betrayal. "Why did you do it?" "Money, Jake," Davis said, his voice cold and emotionless. "It's always about the money. Your wife offered me a fortune to kill you. I couldn't resist." "You betrayed me, Davis," Jake said. "You betrayed our friendship. You betrayed everything we stood for." "Don't be so dramatic, Jake," Davis said with a sneer. "It's just business." Jake lunged at Davis, tackling him to the ground. They wrestled, exchanging blows, their bodies covered in blood and sweat. Jake eventually gained the upper hand, pinning Davis beneath him. He pulled out his knife and held it to Davis's throat. "Any last words, Davis?" Jake asked, his voice a low growl. Davis stared up at him, his eyes filled with fear. "I'm sorry, Jake," he whispered. Jake hesitated for a moment, his hand trembling. He had wanted to kill Davis, to make him pay for his betrayal. But he couldn't bring himself to do it. He pulled the knife away from Davis's throat and stood up. "Get out of here, Davis," he said. "Disappear. If I ever see you again, I'll kill you." Davis scrambled to his feet and ran into the jungle, disappearing into the darkness. Jake watched him go, his heart filled with a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. He had spared Davis's life, but he knew he would never be able to forgive him. Jake returned to the United States, a changed man. He had lost everything, his wife, his friends, his career. He was a ghost, haunted by the memory of his betrayal. He knew he couldn't go back to his old life. He couldn't trust anyone, couldn't allow himself to be vulnerable. He decided to disappear, to start a new life in a place where no one knew him. He moved to a small town in the mountains, far away from the city, far away from his past. He changed his name again, this time to John Smithson. He bought a small cabin in the woods and lived a simple life, hunting and fishing to survive. He tried to forget about Sarah, about Davis, about the betrayal that had shattered his world. But the memories were always there, lurking in the shadows, reminding him of what he had lost. One day, he received a letter from Snake. It was a short, cryptic message. "She's gone," the letter read. "Peace at last." Jake knew what it meant. Sarah was dead. He didn't know how she had died, or who had killed her. But he felt a sense of closure, a sense that the past was finally behind him. He burned the letter and scattered the ashes in the wind. He knew he would never truly escape his past, but he could try to build a new future, a future free from betrayal and violence. He continued to live in the mountains, a solitary figure, a ghost in the wilderness. He had learned a hard lesson about trust, about loyalty, about the price of silence. And he would never forget it. Years passed. Jake, now John Smithson, had carved out a quiet existence. He was a skilled woodsman, self-sufficient and content in his solitude. But the scars of the past remained, etched deep within his soul. He avoided human contact, wary of opening himself up to the possibility of betrayal again. One day, a young woman stumbled upon his cabin. She was lost, injured, and terrified. Her name was Emily, and she was a wildlife photographer, tracking a rare species of bird in the mountains. Jake, despite his reservations, couldn't turn her away. He tended to her wounds, provided her with food and shelter, and helped her find her way back to civilization. As Emily recovered, she and Jake began to talk. She learned about his past, about his military service, about the betrayal that had led him to the mountains. She didn't judge him. She listened with compassion and understanding. She saw the pain in his eyes, but she also saw the goodness in his heart. Slowly, Jake began to open up to Emily. He told her about Sarah, about Davis, about the rage and despair that had consumed him. He realized that he had been carrying a heavy burden for too long, and that he needed to let it go. Emily helped him to forgive Sarah, to forgive Davis, and to forgive himself. She showed him that it was possible to trust again, to love again, to find hope even in the darkest of times. As Emily prepared to leave, Jake realized that he didn't want her to go. He had grown to care for her, to value her companionship. He knew that she was the only person who had ever truly understood him. "Stay," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Emily smiled. "I thought you'd never ask," she said. Emily stayed. She and Jake built a life together in the mountains, a life filled with love, laughter, and mutual respect. Jake never fully escaped his past, but he learned to live with it. He realized that revenge was not the answer, that forgiveness was the only way to heal. He had found peace in the mountains, and he had found love in the most unexpected of places. He was no longer a ghost, haunted by the past. He was a man, finally free to live his life to the fullest. Years turned into a comfortable rhythm. Jake and Emily were deeply in love, their cabin filled with warmth and laughter. Jake had even started to allow himself to think about the future, about building a family. The ghosts of the past seemed to finally be fading. But the past, it turned out, wasn't quite finished with him. One crisp autumn morning, as Jake was chopping wood, a van pulled up to the cabin. Two men in dark suits emerged, their faces grim. They moved with a practiced efficiency that sent a chill down Jake's spine. "Jake Stratton," one of them asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Jake straightened, his instincts kicking in. He knew these men weren't here for a friendly visit. "Who's asking?" he replied, his hand subtly moving towards the axe. "We're here to talk about Sarah," the men said. Jake's heart sank. Sarah. He thought he had put her behind him. "She left behind some unfinished business," the men continued. "Business that needs to be taken care of." Jake knew immediately what they were talking about. The real estate deal, the money, the people Sarah had gotten involved with. It had all come back to haunt him. "I don't know anything about that," Jake said, trying to buy time. "Don't play coy with us, Stratton," the men said, his voice hardening. "We know you were involved. We know you took care of Davis." Jake realized he was dealing with professionals, people who knew his history. He knew he couldn't outrun them, and he wouldn't let them hurt Emily. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice resigned. "The money," the men said. "Sarah stole a lot of money from some very dangerous people. We want it back." "I don't have it," Jake said. "I never saw a dime." The men smirked. "We don't believe you. We know Sarah told you where it was hidden." Jake knew he was in a bind. He could fight them, but he risked Emily's safety. He could try to negotiate, but these men didn't seem like they were in the mood for bargaining. "I need some time," Jake said. "I need to figure out where Sarah hid the money." The men considered this for a moment. "We'll give you 24 hours, he said. "But if you try to run, or if you go to the authorities, we'll kill Emily. Understand?" Jake nodded, his jaw tight. He understood perfectly. The men got back in the van and drove away, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. He knew he was in a desperate situation. He had to protect Emily, find the money, and somehow get rid of these men, all within 24 hours. Jake knew he had to act fast. He couldn't rely on the authorities. These men were too powerful, too well-connected. He was on his own. He started by searching the cabin, looking for any clue Sarah might have left behind. He tore the place apart, but found nothing. He knew Sarah was meticulous, she wouldn't have left anything obvious. Then he remembered something Sarah had said once, a casual remark about her grandmother's old house in Chicago. She had mentioned that the house was filled with hidden compartments and secret passages. Jake realized that Sarah might have hidden the money there. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead he had. He told Emily what was happening, explaining the danger they were in. He knew she was scared, but she was also strong. She trusted him, and she knew he would do everything he could to protect her. Together, they packed a bag and drove to the nearest airport. They boarded a flight to Chicago, hoping they weren't being followed. When they arrived in Chicago, they went straight to Sarah's grandmother's house. It was an old, dilapidated Victorian mansion, long abandoned and overgrown with weeds. Jake and Emily spent hours searching the house, exploring every room, every nook and cranny. They found hidden compartments behind bookshelves, secret passages beneath the floorboards, but still no sign of the money. Just when they were about to give up, Emily discovered a small, antique music box in the attic. She wound it up, and a delicate melody filled the room. As the music played, Jake noticed a faint clicking sound coming from the music box. He examined it closely and discovered a hidden compartment inside. Inside the compartment, he found a small key and a handwritten note. The note was from Sarah, addressed to him. Jake, it read. I know I've done terrible things. I'm so sorry. The money is hidden where our love first bloomed. Use it wisely. Jake realized that Sarah was referring to the park where they had first met, years ago. He and Emily rushed to the park, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They searched the park for hours, following the clues Sarah had left behind. Finally, they found a small, metal box buried beneath the old oak tree where they had shared their first kiss. Inside the box, they found stacks of cash, enough to make them both rich beyond their wildest dreams. Jake knew that finding the money was only half the battle. He still had to deal with the men who were after him. He decided to set a trap for them. He contacted them, telling them he had found the money and was willing to hand it over. He told them to meet him at the old house in Chicago, the same house where they had found the music box. He knew it was a dangerous gamble, but he had no other choice. When the men arrived, they were armed and ready for a fight. They surrounded the house, their eyes scanning for any sign of trouble. Jake and Emily were waiting for them inside, armed with the weapons they had brought from the mountains. The battle was fierce and brutal. Jake used his special forces training to outmaneuver the men, taking them down one by one. Emily fought bravely by his side, proving that she was more than just a photographer. In the end, Jake and Emily were the only ones left standing. The men who had come to take their lives were dead, their bodies scattered across the floor of the old house. Jake knew that he and Emily could never go back to their old life. They would always be looking over their shoulders, wondering if someone was coming after them. They decided to use the money they had found to start a new life somewhere far away, a place where they could be safe and happy. They left Chicago, leaving the old house and the ghosts of the past behind them. They traveled the world, exploring new cultures, meeting new people. They eventually settled down on a small, tropical island, where they built a beautiful house overlooking the ocean. They lived a peaceful life, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the love they shared. Jake never forgot the betrayal he had suffered, but he learned to forgive and to move on. He had found peace, and he had found love. He was finally free. Years later, an old man sat on the porch of his island home, watching the sunset. His hair was gray, and his face was lined with wrinkles, but his eyes still held a spark of life. His wife, a beautiful woman with a warm smile, came and sat beside him. They held hands, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "Do you ever think about the past?" she asked. The old man sighed. "Sometimes," he said. "But I try not to let it consume me." "You've come a long way," she said, squeezing his hand. I couldn't have done it without you, he said. You saved me, Emily. You showed me that it was possible to love again. Emily smiled. We saved each other, Jake, she said. They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the sky turn from orange to purple to black. What do you think happened to Davis? Emily asked. Jake shrugged. I don't know, he said. And I don't care. He's gone from my life. That's all that matters. And Sarah? Emily asked. Jake sighed. I hope she found peace, he said. I hope she was able to find forgiveness. They sat in silence for a few more minutes, lost in their own thoughts. I love you, Jake, Emily said. I love you too, Emily, Jake said. They kissed, their love as strong as ever. They had faced death, betrayal, and despair, but they had emerged stronger than ever. They had found happiness in the most unexpected of places. And they knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. The revenge he sought turned into a peaceful life with his love. The end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What part shocked you the most? And if you love stories like this, check out this next video right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.